Rabbi Jacob Blumenthal, the executive director of the Rabbinical Assembly, wrote the following in an article that some of you may have seen for the inaugural email called Connections, Connecting to Each Other for the conservative movement. And I know that, at least in the beginning of his remarks, many of us feel the same way. He writes that one of my favorite moments in the service in the morning is when I gather my tzitzit, as so many of us did this morning, the fringes on each four of the corners of my talit, bringing all four tzitziot in the plural, all through four tzitzit together as we prepare to recite the Shema. And as we bring together the four strands, the separate strands, we recite the words of the Siddur as we sang this morning. May God bring all of us together from the four corners of the world as Jewish people, and having said this for millennia, we symbolically know that we are spread throughout the four corners of this world. And with each morning's recitation of the Shema, when we speak of God's oneness, we also think about what it means to bring people together beyond those who are in our physical proximity. It turns out that we as Jews, through the concept of global peoplehood, are experts at virtual communities. Maybe not technically, but we are working hard on that part. As I mentioned in my Torah introduction, this week the Torah portion begins with the words Vayakhel, in which Moses gathers Kehilah as a community. The Torah implies that we must build a mishkan, a home for God's presence, and that we must build a Kehilah, a community first, and as it says on the entrance to our sanctuary, V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham, and you shall build for me a sanctuary, and I, God, will dwell betocham. I will dwell within you, within us. In this new environment, the need for social distancing is particularly painful for religions, for us as a Jewish people. This pandemic has affected our lives in so many different ways, socially, emotionally, spiritually, and for so many still to come financially. It's also forcing us to redefine what we mean by community as we reshape our personal interactions. It can make us feel isolated, powerless. The challenge of living with the reality of this pandemic will, without doubt, become greater before it lessens. We are so used to coming together as a kehilah to learn and pray and sing and celebrate, and as we heed the call for social distancing to save lives, let's follow the spirit of gathering our tzitzit and our portion of Vayakhel and ensure that this doesn't also become spiritual distancing. Virtual prayer classes and experiences can help. We hope to begin to do that on Zoom beginning on Monday, but also through the gift of technology, we can stay in touch with one another. We can reach out to loved ones to check in with those risk of illness or loneliness, and deliver kind words. We must gather together in any way we can and form kehilah, community and connection, in every way possible. And of course, we should never forget that we have each other. We don't need to allow the coronavirus to drive us apart. If we're creative, we can find ways to support each other, to express our love and concern, to help each others with our needs, to stand for causes that we care about. Don't let this requirement of social distancing to fray the tzitzit, the ties that bind us to friends and loved ones and community and to those in need. Let's promise that every hand that we don't shake must be a phone call that we place, that every embrace that we avoid becomes a verbal expression of warmth and concern, that every foot of distance that we place between ourselves and others must become a thought as to how we might be of help to another should the need arise. We're not powerless. We can't control everything that's going to occur over the next weeks and months. But then again, so many of us realize in the lives we have lived that we can't control everything in our everyday lives. But we do have some sense of control. We can help, we're told, to determine the course of the plague, and the following bears repeating no matter how many times we've heard about it or read about it over the last weeks. By practicing hand washing, avoiding face touching, practicing social distancing, and observing other guidelines of our health authorities, we can greatly reduce the burden of our healthcare system, saving literally thousands of lives. We must reach out to those who are isolated. Beth Israel has already begun through the Board of Trustees and other volunteers calling a larger part of our congregation, beginning with those who are elderly and who we think might be in need of care and concern and calls. We'll be asking for help from those who might be willing to become a phone buddy or do a grocery or pharmacy run. We can choose to continue our involvement, study, community organization, shifting our involvement online to maintain the strong bonds of community that we so value. What we do matters and determines in large measure what our unknown future will be. I'd like to conclude by sharing a moving poem by Lynn Unger, which ties to our Torah mandate of Shabbat. The poem is entitled Pandemic. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Shabbat, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling, give up, just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit in your life. Center down. When your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has become clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we shall live. Let us not forget above all that even in these challenging times, through prayer and ritual and action, that we can build a mishkan, a dwelling place for God, moving from social distancing to spiritual solidarity. And we will continue now with the Chatzi Kaddish of the Musaf service, which can be found the middle of page 184.